Hello friends, welcome back to the data structure tutorial, and today we will be discussing about insertion of new node at the beginning of doubly linked list. It is very similar to the insertion of new node at the beginning of singly linked list. We have to just add few lines there. So the things which we need for this operation is we need a structure of a node. So we know that how the structure of a node is. So it's containing three fields. One is your information field, one is next field, and one is previous address field. Okay, so we have created one function insert at beginning which will be receiving one data, and we want to add this data in the node, and then we'll decide that node to be insert at the beginning of the list. So let us start. So first of all, we need to create a new node, and we know that how to create that new node. So here is the code. So we'll simply creating the object of node class whose name is temporary. This new keyword will allocate the memory is equals to the data members of that class, that is three fields. So we have just created a node whose name is temporary, and one address will be allocated. Let's say that address is 500 with this line. Then whatever data you received from the user, let's say that data is 5. So you have storing that data in the information field of the temporary. So we'll take this is our information field, this is our next field, and this will be our previous field. So here you store that data on this line. Then the next field of temporary is null, and the previous field of the temporary is also null. So what it means, you have just created a independent node whose name is temporary and address is 500. And now we have to insert this node at the beginning of the doubly linked list. So we have to check that whether the existing list is available or not, and how to check it. So we will be having one pointer whose name will be start, and if the starting point is null, sorry, it should be double equals to, if starting point is null, so what it means, we do not have any list with in which we want to insert. So if you don't have any list, so this node itself become my starting point. So what you need to do, you just need to assign this address to this variable. So how will you write? If start is null, then assign the address of temporary to the start. So that node itself become your starting point, and there is no other nodes to represent. But if this is not the case, if this is not the case, then what we need to do, we just need to consider that we will be having some list. So I'll quickly write that list. So suppose we have a list, so this will be my starting point, and it has a certain address, suppose 300. It has a certain address 700, and this will be having certain address 500, and it is consisting of certain data, suppose 7, 9 and 8. This will be your null. This is pointing to the 700. So this is like this, and it will be pointing to the previous node. So here 300, here again 200, so it is pointing to the next node. Here 700, so it will be pointing to the previous node, and last node will be representing as null. So we have an existing list, so that's why we come to the else part. Now what we want to do, we want to add this newly created node at the beginning of the list. So if you add that node at the beginning of the list, so how will it look? Currently it will look like this. It is null, it is null, the address is 500, the name is temporary, and this is the existing list whose previous is null. I'll writing n only. This is 700, and it is 300, it is 9, it is 200, it is 700, and it is 300. Then it is pointing to these two nodes. It is 700, this is 8, then this is null, and it is 200. Okay, and this is your starting point. So if you add this temporary at the beginning of the list, existing list, so what changes we need to do? So we need to connect this node with this 300, the address is 300, and in the previous field of the start we should have the address 500. So these changes we need to make. So we'll quickly write those changes. So what you need to do, you simply need to change few things, that in the 500 next field we are writing the address of start. So in the temporaries, in the temporaries next field we'll be writing the address of start. So temporaries next field means this one, the address of start is 300, so you are writing 300 here. Now this is connected. And in the previous field of start, so the current start is 300. In the 300's previous field, we want to put the address of temporary. So starts previous field, here you want to put the address of temporary, that is how much? 500. So these two nodes are connected. Now you inserted a new node at the beginning. So who is your starting point now? This 500 is a starting point. So you need to assign this address to the start. So you will be writing start is equals to temporary. So what it means? The address of temporary is assigned to the start. So start is not here now. Start is at 500 and this is your starting point. So you just added the new node at the beginning of the doubly linked list. Now let us write a code for this. So I have created one folder DS tutorial. Inside this folder I will be creating one file whose name will be suppose demo dll, that is doubly linked list.java, and this will contain one class whose name is demo dll with the main method which is representing public static void main string arguments. And here we will be creating another class. I will be name that class as dll operations. So why I have given this name? Because all the operations related to the doubly linked list will be writing into this class. Then very first thing is we need to create an inner class for the structure of a node. So I'll be giving a name node. How many fields are there in the node? 3 fields. So one is integer field which is represented by the variable info. Then second one is node next, which will be storing address of next node. Then node previous, which will be storing address of previous node. Okay. Then we will be creating one function void create node. And what will happen whenever you call this node create a node, you will be passing your data here. So that data will be receiving in the form of integer data. And you need to create an object node. It will create a problem. So what we'll do, we'll be creating some pointers nodes object, like we'll name it as start, which is initially null. Then we'll be creating one temp which is initially null. Then we'll be creating some other variables p null, q null, which will be required in future. So I'll be declaring it right now. So we have declared some objects of node which are pointing to the null, and whenever you will be calling this create node function, so there should be allocation of memory to this temp. So temp is equals to new node, so it will allocate the memory is equals to the data members of this. So it will get the 3 fields, and in the temporaries information field you want to get your data, so you assign that data. So temporaries next field initially you want to assign as a null because there is no connection with the other node initially, and in the previous field also you want to assign the value null, so there is a independent node you just created. Okay, then we created one function that void get not get insert at beginning, and it will receive one data from the user. So it will have one arguments data. So whenever you are calling this, so first step is to create the node, and you have just created a function. So you will be simply calling create a new node with this data. So it will be return you the new node whose name is temporary. Then the next thing you will be doing, like you can see here that you will be having, you completed this part, you have to check the condition that whether existing list is available or not with if statement. existing condition if statement. So here you will be writing if if starting pointer is equals to null, means you do not have existing list. So what will happen? The temporary itself becomes your starting point. Else, if it is not the case, whatever changes you just made, that these three lines, that temporary is next to the start, and start previous to the temp, and start is equals to temp. So you will be writing here temporary, which is your new node whose next will be connected to the previous start, and start previous will be connected to the temp, and start is your new temporary. So we have just written the algorithm of insertion at the beginning of the list. Now in the next video we will be discussing about insertion at the end of the list.